Welcome to Whispered MBA, our ASMR channel dedicated to discovering new skills, new knowledge, and new career paths in the age of AI and beyond. Our sleepy session today is our second session in the MBA Journey series. Our topic for this evening is titled, When Does an MBA Pay Off? Understanding ROI, career mobility, and long-term value. Let's begin our soothing discussion. In our previous session, we explored a foundational question: what is an MBA? We discussed the MBA as a professional graduate degree designed to build cross-functional business fluency, leadership capability, and access to opportunities through skills, network, and brand. Tonight we explore the question that often follows: does an MBA actually pay off? It is one of the most common questions prospective students ask. It is also one of the most misunderstood. When people discuss MBA return on investment, they often focus on a single number: salary. The conversation frequently sounds something like this: what was your compensation before the MBA? What was your compensation afterward? What is the difference? At first glance, this seems reasonable. After all, compensation matters. Career decisions have financial consequences. Education requires significant investment. Most people naturally want to know whether that investment produces measurable results. Yet salary alone tells only part of the story. A much more useful question is this: does the MBA materially improve your career trajectory? Notice the difference. Trajectory is not the same thing as salary. Salary is a snapshot. Trajectory is a direction. Trajectory considers where you are going, how quickly you are progressing, and which opportunities become available along the way. A useful way to think about MBA payoff is not simply whether your next paycheck increases. The more important question is whether the degree meaningfully changes the future path of your career. Does it increase your earning potential? Does it improve the quality of opportunities available to you? Does it help you reach important goals faster? Does it provide access that would otherwise be difficult to obtain? These questions create a more complete picture, and that picture typically includes 4 different forms of payoff. The first is economic payoff. This is the form most people immediately recognize. Higher salary, higher bonus potential, greater long-term earning power, access to more senior roles, a move from manager to director, from analyst to associate, from individual contributor to leader. These outcomes are tangible, easy to measure, and often highly visible. Yet they represent only one piece of the puzzle. The second form of payoff involves career mobility. Sometimes the most valuable outcome of an MBA is not earning more money immediately. It is gaining access to opportunities that were previously unavailable. Imagine a professional working in audit who wants to move into corporate finance, or an engineer who wants to enter product management, or a military and additional opportunities that compound over time. This is why acceleration matters. Some MBA graduates find themselves entering leadership pipelines earlier than they otherwise would have. Others skip intermediate career steps. Still others gain access to structured development programs designed to prepare future executives. In these situations, the MBA is not merely increasing opportunity, it is increasing speed, and speed can be extraordinarily valuable. The fourth form of payoff is perhaps the least visible and, in many cases, the most durable. Platform payoff. Think back to our discussion in episode 1. We described the MBA as a platform composed of skills, network, and brand. Platform payoff emerges when those assets continue creating value long after graduation. A former classmate introduces you to a future employer. An alumnus provides industry insight. A recruiter recognizes the school's reputation. A business partner emerges from a relationship formed years earlier. An investor takes a meeting. A customer responds positively to shared connections. These events may occur 5 years after graduation, 10 years after graduation, sometimes even longer. The value continues compounding. This is why many MBA graduates describe their network as one of the most important outcomes of the experience, not because it helps them find one job, but because it helps them navigate an entire career. Taken together, these 4 dimensions create a much richer understanding of payoff. Economic payoff, career mobility payoff, acceleration payoff, platform payoff. A useful observation emerges from this framework. An MBA can increase value even when salary changes modestly. Imagine 2 scenarios. In the first, a graduate earns slightly more money, but returns to essentially the same career path they were already following. In the second, a graduate gains access to a dramatically different set of opportunities, stronger networks, and faster advancement potential. The immediate salary difference may not fully capture the distinction. One path changes compensation, the other changes trajectory. And trajectory is often where the largest returns originate. This realization leads to another important question. If MBA outcomes are driven by more than coursework, what actually creates the payoff? Why do some graduates experience transformative results while others see more modest benefits? The answer often involves 3 powerful mechanisms: network, signaling, and industry access. Those mechanisms frequently influence outcomes far more than any individual class, and understanding them may be one of the most important parts of evaluating whether an MBA makes sense for your own career. Let us begin with network. Many people prefer to believe that hiring is entirely meritocratic, that organizations simply identify contains risk, and whenever risk exists, people look for ways to reduce it. Relationships frequently serve that purpose. A referral tells a hiring manager something important. Someone trusted this candidate enough to recommend them. Someone is willing to attach their own credibility to that recommendation. This reduces uncertainty, and reducing uncertainty often increases opportunity. The network, therefore, does more than create introductions. It creates trust, it creates visibility, and it creates access. In many industries, that access can be the difference between remaining outside the conversation and being invited into it. As we continue our discussion, let us return to the three mechanisms that often drive MBA outcomes: network, signaling, and industry access. Interestingly, none of these appear directly on a course's syllabus, yet they frequently influence career outcomes as much as, or sometimes more than, the classroom experience itself. We concluded our previous discussion by exploring network. Now let us consider signaling. Every hiring decision involves uncertainty. Organizations rarely possess complete information about a candidate. A resume provides clues. An interview provides observations. References provide perspective. Yet uncertainty remains. Can this person operate at a leadership level? Can they manage ambiguity? Can they work across functions? Can they succeed in a new industry or role? Signaling helps answer those questions. A signal is simply evidence that reduces uncertainty. Employers use signals constantly. Past employers act as signals. Previous job titles act as signals. Certifications act as signals. Recommendations act as signals. Educational credentials act as signals. A strong MBA can function as a particularly powerful signal because it represents external validation. A respected institution has evaluated the candidate. The candidate successfully navigated a competitive admissions process. The candidate completed rigorous academic and professional requirements. The candidate demonstrated commitment, discipline, and ambition. These signals become especially important when a professional is attempting to change directions. Consider a military officer transitioning into corporate leadership, a non-profit manager entering private sector strategy, an entrepreneur seeking a role inside a large corporation, an international professional entering a new geographic market. In each case, employers may recognize valuable experience, but still wonder whether that experience translates effectively into a different environment. The MBA helps bridge that uncertainty. It provides a common language, a common credential, and often a common set of expectations. This does not mean every MBA creates identical signaling value. Far from it. Signals vary based on context. Program reputation matters. Employer perceptions matter. Industry norms matter. A consulting firm may interpret educational signals differently than a startup. An investment bank may evaluate credentials differently than a technology company. The strength of the signal depends upon who is receiving it and how they interpret It helps employers see not only where the candidate has been, but where the candidate might go next. The third mechanism is industry access. Of the three mechanisms, this may be the most concrete, the most measurable, and often the easiest to observe. Many industries maintain structured hiring pipelines. Consulting firms recruit from specific schools. Investment banks recruit from specific schools. Leadership development programs recruit from specific schools. Certain product management, finance, strategy, and operations roles recruit from specific schools. These pipelines create access, and access matters. Imagine two equally capable professionals. One is applying through a general online application process. The other is participating in a formal recruiting channel specifically designed for MBA candidates. The second individual enters a different conversation, a different process, a different pool. In some cases, the MBA transforms someone from an outsider into a standard candidate. The difference can be substantial. This is one reason prospective students should pay close attention to placement outcomes. Not simply rankings, not marketing materials, actual outcomes. Which employers recruit there? Which industries hire there? Which geographies are represented? Which roles do graduates obtain? A school may be excellent in general, yet weak for a particular objective. Conversely, a school may be extraordinarily strong for a specific destination. Alignment matters far more than broad reputation alone. Once these three mechanisms are understood, an important question emerges. When does the MBA tend to produce the strongest payoff? Not every situation is equally favourable. Certain circumstances consistently generate stronger returns than others. Perhaps the most common high payoff scenario involves career switching. Imagine an operations professional who wants to become a strategy consultant, an engineer who wants to enter product management, an accountant who wants to transition into corporate finance leadership, a military officer seeking entry into a corporate leadership development program. These transitions are often difficult without structured support. The challenge is not necessarily capability. The challenge is credibility, experience, and access. Employers often prefer candidates who already possess relevant backgrounds. The MBA helps overcome this barrier. Internships create experience. Networks create introductions. Recruiting pipelines create access. The degree itself provides a narrative explaining the transition. Together, these factors dramatically reduce friction. This is why career switchers frequently experience some of the strongest MBA outcomes. The MBA is not simply enhancing an existing trajectory, it is helping create an entirely new one. Another high payoff scenario occurs when a professional encounters what might be called a credential ceiling. Sometimes these ceilings are explicit. A leadership role requires graduate education. A promotion requires advanced credentials. An executive development track expects a master's degree. Other times the ceiling is implicit. Nobody normally requires the degree, yet a pattern becomes visible. Senior leaders possess graduate education. Promotion trends favour candidates with advanced credentials. Hiring decisions consistently reflect educational preferences. In these situations, the MBA may function as a key that unlocks advancement. However, caution is important. Many professionals assume such ceilings exist when they do not. The best approach is evidence. Look at leadership biographies, study promotion patterns, review job postings, observe who advances and why. Assumptions are less useful than observations. Another situation associated with strong payoff involves movement toward cross-functional leadership. As careers progress, technical expertise often becomes less important than organizational influence. The transition from individual contributor to manager, from manager to leader of managers, from specialist to general manager, each step requires broader perspective, broader communication skills, broader understanding of organizational dynamics. The MBA is particularly well suited to these transitions because it focuses on integration. It helps professionals understand how different parts of the organization interact. This system's perspective becomes increasingly valuable at higher levels of leadership. Yet another strong payoff scenario involves what might be called a brand reset. Some professionals produce exceptional results in environments that employers may not fully recognize. Perhaps they work at a small company, a local organization, a niche industry, a little-known employer. The challenge is not capability. The challenge is visibility. Recruiters often evaluate candidates quickly. They look for familiar signals, recognizable organizations, recognizable credentials, recognizable experiences. A strong MBA can help bridge that gap. It provides a familiar reference point, a recognized signal, a story that is easier for employers to interpret. For some individuals, this repositioning creates substantial value. Finally, there are careers where relationships themselves are central to success. Entrepreneurship, business development, client services, executive leadership, partnership roles, board service. In these environments, networks are not simply helpful, they are strategic assets. Access to investors, customers, partners, future employers, industry experts. The value compounds over time, and because MBA networks often remain active for decades, the return can continue long after graduation. A useful rule of thumb emerges. The more your future opportunities depend upon relationships, the more valuable network effects become. Let us now explore situations where MBA payoff becomes weaker or less certain, examine the true cost of the degree, and introduce a practical framework for evaluating return on investment with greater clarity and realism. This observation may sound obvious, yet it is often overlooked. When people evaluate graduate education, they sometimes focus exclusively on success stories. The consultant who doubled their compensation, the MBA outcomes depend heavily on context, and understanding where ROI becomes weaker is just as important as understanding where it becomes strong. Let us begin with one of the most common situations. You are already on the trajectory you want. Imagine a professional who is already working in their target industry, already performing the function they enjoy, already progressing at a healthy pace, already developing leadership responsibilities. In this situation, a full-time MBA may provide less incremental value. The question becomes difficult. If you leave a strong trajectory, incur significant costs, and then return to a similar path afterward, how much has really changed? The answer may still justify the investment. Perhaps the network is valuable. Perhaps leadership development matters. Perhaps the brand creates long-term benefits. But the economic case becomes less obvious. This is one reason many professionals in this position explore alternatives. Part-time programs, employer-sponsored programs, selective executive formats. These approaches allow them to gain many of the benefits while preserving career momentum. Another situation involves roles that simply do not place significant value on MBA credentials. Not every profession recruits through MBA pipelines. Not every employer views the degree as a major differentiator. Many startup environments provide a useful example. Startups often prioritize execution, demonstrated results, domain expertise, technical capability. The question frequently becomes, can you solve the problem? Can you build the product? Can you grow the business? Can you deliver outcomes? In these environments, the MBA may still help, but its value often comes indirectly through network, leadership development, or business fluency, rather than direct credential recognition. Highly technical careers can operate similarly. A software architect, a research scientist, a specialized engineer, an elite quantitative analyst. In some cases, performance and technical expertise dominate educational credentials. Again, the MBA can contribute value, but it may not be the primary driver of advancement. Another situation deserves particular attention because it is surprisingly common. Using the MBA to avoid making a decision. Career uncertainty can be uncomfortable. Many professionals eventually reach a point where they feel dissatisfied, uncertain, or restless. The temptation is understandable. Graduate school appears to offer a temporary solution. More time, more options, more reflection. And sometimes it does. Yet an MBA can become very expensive exploration. A useful question to ask is this: am I pursuing the MBA because I know where I want to go, or because I do not know where I want to go? These situations require different solutions. Exploration has value, but not all exploration requires a six-figure investment. Sometimes an internal transfer provides answers. Sometimes a side project provides answers. Sometimes networking provides answers. Sometimes targeted learning provides answers. The MBA can absolutely This observation brings us to one of the most important concepts in evaluating graduate education: total cost of ownership. Many prospective students focus primarily on tuition. Tuition matters, but it is only one part of the equation. The true cost of an MBA extends much further. Direct costs are the easiest to identify: tuition, fees, books, travel, housing changes, program residencies, technology requirements. These expenses are visible and relatively easy to estimate. Indirect costs are often larger, particularly for full-time programs: lost salary, lost bonuses, lost promotions, lost equity, lost retirement contributions. These costs accumulate quietly. For some professionals, opportunity cost becomes the single largest expense associated with the degree. Then there are soft costs: stress, family disruption, relocation challenges, geographic separation, lifestyle changes, time constraints. These factors rarely appear in financial models, yet they influence quality of life significantly. A realistic evaluation considers all three categories: direct costs, indirect costs, and soft costs. Only then can the investment be assessed properly. Once cost is understood, attention shifts toward outcomes. And this is where many people make another common mistake. They compare starting salaries. The comparison appears straightforward: pre-MBA salary versus post-MBA salary. Yet this comparison can be misleading. A more sophisticated approach compares trajectories. Imagine two scenarios. In the first scenario, you do not pursue the MBA. What is your likely career path over the next 2 to 5 years? What promotions might occur? What compensation increases are realistic? What opportunities are already available? Now imagine the MBA scenario. What role are you likely to obtain after graduation? What compensation is realistic? What advancement opportunities become available? What new pathways emerge? Most importantly, how likely are these outcomes? This last question matters tremendously, because MBA outcomes are not guarantees. They are probabilities. A strong program may improve your odds. A strong network may improve your odds. A strong recruiting ecosystem may improve your odds, but probability still matters. The most useful comparison therefore becomes probability-weighted outcomes, not best-case scenarios, not marketing materials, realistic scenarios. Compared thoughtfully. When viewed this way, another insight emerges. The MBA creates the greatest value when it changes the slope of your career rather than simply the starting point. Imagine two graphs. The first graph begins slightly higher after graduation, but the long-term growth rate remains largely unchanged. The second graph begins higher and continues growing faster. Which graph creates more value? The answer is obvious. The slope matters more than the intercept. The long-term trajectory matters more than the first job. This is why many graduates describe the MBA as a platform rather than a transaction. As we move forward, we can now begin building a practical framework, a way to assess whether MBA payoff is likely to be strong in your particular situation. Not in theory, not for the average student, for you. Up to this point, we have explored the different forms of MBA payoff, economic payoff, career mobility, acceleration, platform value. We have examined the three mechanisms that often drive outcomes: network, signaling, industry access. And we have discussed both high payoff and lower payoff situations. The natural question now becomes, how can someone evaluate their own situation? How can a professional determine whether an MBA is likely to create meaningful value for them personally? A useful starting point is to stop thinking about the MBA as a degree. Instead, think about it as a tool. Different tools solve different problems. A hammer is valuable when you need to drive a nail, less valuable when you need to tighten a screw. The same principle applies here. The quality of the tool matters, but matching the tool to the problem matters even more. This begins with diagnosis. Before deciding whether an MBA is appropriate, it helps to identify what is actually preventing progress. Many professionals assume they need more education when the real obstacle lies elsewhere. Perhaps the challenge is networking, perhaps it is interviewing, perhaps it is experience, perhaps it is visibility, perhaps it is geographic access. Different constraints require different solutions. Consider a professional who consistently reaches interviews but rarely receives offers. The problem may not be access. The problem may be interview readiness, case interviews, behavioral interviews, technical interviews, executive presence, communication. An MBA may help indirectly, but targeted preparation might address the issue more efficiently. Now consider another professional. They rarely receive interviews at all. Applications disappear into online systems. Recruiters never respond. Their experience is strong, yet opportunities remain elusive. In this situation, access may be the primary constraint. Network, referrals, brand recognition, industry connections. An MBA may directly address those issues. The distinction matters because it helps identify whether the MBA is solving the correct problem. A useful framework involves examining 5 common blockers. First, brand. Do employers recognize and understand your background? Or do your accomplishments remain largely invisible because they occurred in organizations unfamiliar to recruiters? Second, experience. Do you possess the specific experiences your target role expects? Third, network. Do you have meaningful relationships within the industry or function you hope to enter? Fourth, interview readiness. Can you effectively communicate your value? Can you perform under evaluation? Can you tell your story clearly? Fifth, geographic access. Are you trying to enter a market where you currently have little presence or few connections? Understanding which blocker matters most creates clarity, and clarity improves decision making. Once blockers have been identified, another useful exercise is evaluating substantial leverage. The third factor is brand gap. Do your current credentials accurately reflect your capabilities, or do your existing signals undersell your potential? The fourth factor is network need. Will relationships significantly influence your future opportunities? The fifth factor is program fit. Can you realistically access programs with strong outcomes for your desired destination? The sixth factor is cost alignment. Can you pursue the degree responsibly without creating excessive financial strain? And finally, execution readiness. This factor may be the most important of all. Are you prepared to fully engage? Recruiting, networking, leadership opportunities, career development. Because value extraction is not automatic, the MBA does not happen to you. You actively participate in creating the outcome. This brings us to an observation that appears repeatedly across MBA programs. The highest performing students often approach the experience differently. They do not wait for opportunities to appear. They actively create them. Let us begin with networking. Many students assume networking begins halfway through the program or when recruiting starts. In reality, the highest return networking often occurs very early, the first few weeks. The first conversations, the first relationships. These interactions compound over time. Students who build strong relationships early often discover that opportunities begin appearing organically. Information flows more easily. Advice becomes more accessible. Introductions happen naturally. Support networks emerge. An important lesson often follows. Networking is not primarily about collecting contacts. It is about building relationships. Relationships require reciprocity. The most effective network builders do not focus exclusively on what they can receive. They focus on what they can contribute. They share information, make introductions, help classmates prepare, support peers during recruiting, create value first. And because they create value, they often receive value in return. Another area where high-performing students excel is signaling. They learn to tell a coherent story. A surprisingly large number of professionals struggle with this. Their careers contain impressive accomplishments, yet those accomplishments are difficult to understand quickly. Recruiters do not have unlimited time. Hiring managers do not conduct forensic investigations. The ability to communicate your professional narrative clearly matters. Why are you pursuing this transition? What have you accomplished? Why are you prepared for the next step? Why will you succeed? Strong candidates answer these questions concisely and confidently. The MBA often provides an opportunity to refine that narrative, to connect past experiences with future aspirations, to transform a collection of jobs into a coherent story. Industry access requires similar intentionality. Recruiting is often treated as something that happens passively. In reality, it resembles project management. Successful candidates understand timelines, application deadlines, interview preparation schedules, networking targets, feedback cycles, iterations As we reach the final portion of our discussion, let us consider an important reality. The MBA is not the only path to professional growth. This observation is sometimes overlooked because MBA conversations often focus on a simple question: should I get the degree? Yet a more useful question may be slightly different. What problem am I trying to solve? Because once the problem is clearly understood, alternative solutions become easier to evaluate. Imagine a professional whose primary challenge is a technical skill gap. Perhaps they want stronger analytics capabilities, more finance knowledge, a deeper understanding of data science. In these situations, a specialized master's degree may provide a more direct solution. The investment may be smaller, the curriculum may be more targeted, and the outcome may align more precisely with the desired capability. Now consider someone whose primary challenge is leadership development while remaining employed. Leaving the workforce for 2 years may not be practical. A part-time MBA, an online MBA, or even an executive MBA later in their career might provide a better fit. The objective remains growth. The pathway simply changes. Other professionals discover that the challenge is access to experience, not access to education. Perhaps they need exposure to a different function, a different industry, a different type of project. In these situations, an internal transfer may create substantial value, a stretch assignment, a rotational opportunity, a transformation initiative, a cross-functional project. Sometimes the experience itself becomes the credential. There are also situations where certifications create meaningful leverage, particularly when they are recognized and respected within a specific field. Project management, cloud platforms, cybersecurity, data analytics, financial planning, process improvement, governance, risk management, each serves a different purpose. The key is matching the tool to the constraint. If the problem is skill, targeted learning may be enough. If the problem is access, network may matter more. If the problem is credibility, brand may matter more. If the problem is experience, projects may matter more. The MBA becomes most valuable when it addresses multiple constraints simultaneously. This brings us to a practical decision framework, a simple 4-step process for evaluating whether the MBA is the right investment. Step 1 is clarity. Define your destination. This sounds obvious, yet many professionals skip this step. They know they want change. They know they want growth. They know they want something different, but they have not defined what success actually looks like. A useful exercise is specificity. What role do you want? What industry? What geography? What timeline? 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. The clearer the destination becomes, the easier it is to evaluate potential pathways. Because if you cannot define the destination, it becomes difficult to evaluate the bridge. Step 2 is diagnosis. Identify what is preventing progress today. Perhaps it is network. Perhaps it is credibility. reduces, improves decision quality. Step 3 is alignment. Choose the format that matches the challenge. A major career pivot requiring internships and recruiting pipelines may favour a traditional 2-year MBA. A professional seeking acceleration without a dramatic career change may prefer a 1-year program. Someone balancing work and family commitments may benefit from part-time or online formats. A senior leader focused on executive growth may find greater value in an EMBA. Different objectives require different structures. Alignment remains the guiding principle. And finally, step 4. Compare realistic outcomes. Not ideal outcomes, not marketing outcomes, realistic outcomes. Build 2 scenarios. The first is the no MBA scenario. What is likely to happen if you continue on your current path? The second is the MBA scenario. What is realistically achievable through the program you are considering? Then compare them. Cost, probability, time, risk, opportunity. This exercise often reveals insights that simple salary comparisons cannot, because the most important question is rarely, will I make more money immediately? The more important question is, will this decision materially improve my long-term trajectory? As we reflect on everything we have discussed tonight, a pattern begins to emerge. The strongest MBA outcomes tend to occur in several recognizable situations. Structured career pivots, industry changes, function changes, leadership transitions, credential ceilings, brand resets, network-dependent careers, pipeline-driven industries. In these situations, the MBA often acts as a powerful catalyst. At the same time, weaker outcomes tend to emerge when professionals are already on the trajectory they desire. When target roles place little value on the credential, when the degree is being used primarily to postpone difficult decisions, or when costs substantially outweigh realistic benefits. The distinction is important because the MBA is neither universally valuable nor universally unnecessary. Its value depends on context, and context matters. Perhaps the most important lesson from this discussion is that MBA payoff is not driven primarily by coursework. The classroom matters, the learning matters, the leadership development matters. But many outcomes are driven by something else. Network, signaling, industry access, the ability to reduce uncertainty, the ability to create opportunities, the ability to access conversations that might otherwise remain closed. These mechanisms often create value long after graduation, long after the final exam, long after the diploma is framed, long after the first post-MBA job. And that brings us back to a simple idea. An MBA is not merely an educational purchase. It is a career investment. Like any investment, its value depends upon what you are trying to achieve, the quality of the opportunity, the cost of the investment, and your willingness to execute. The degree itself creates possibilities. The individual determines how fully You should recognize the three primary mechanisms that drive outcomes: network, signaling, and industry access. You should be able to identify situations where MBA ROI tends to be strongest, including career pivots, leadership transitions, credential ceilings, brand resets, and network-dependent careers. You should also recognize situations where ROI may be weaker or more uncertain. And finally,